There's something we don't talk about enough. Something that hides in plain sight, wrapped in smiles and good intentions. You know those people who never seem to say no? The ones who drop everything to help, who carry everyone's burdens like they weigh nothing at all? They're everywhere. Maybe you're one of them. And if you look past the surface, past the cheerful facade, you'll notice something unsettling. These incredibly kind souls are often the most exhausted, the most drained, the most quietly desperate people you'll ever encounter. Before we dive deeper into this paradox, if you're finding value in this exploration of human behavior, consider subscribing and hitting that like button. It helps us continue creating content that challenges how we think about ourselves and others. We celebrate kindness as if it's an unmixed blessing. Society holds it up as the gold standard of human virtue. Be kind, we're told from childhood. Kindness is strength. Kindness changes the world. And yes, genuine kindness does all these things. But there's another side to this story, a shadow that most people refuse to acknowledge. Because when kindness becomes your entire identity, when being nice becomes non-negotiable, when you cannot imagine saying no without feeling crushing guilt, that's when kindness transforms from a beautiful trait into something that quietly destroys you from the inside out. Section 1. The origins of compulsive kindness. Let's trace this back to where it begins. Picture a young child in a household where love feels conditional. Maybe affection only comes when they're quiet, obedient, helpful. Maybe praise arrives only when they put others first. The child's developing brain makes a critical connection. My worth equals my usefulness. Being agreeable equals being safe. Kindness equals survival. This isn't conscious. No child sits down and thinks, I'll trade my authentic self for approval. It happens beneath awareness, encoded into the nervous system through thousands of small interactions. The child who shares their toy gets hugs. The one who demands attention gets ignored. The one who sacrifices gets called so mature for their age. And slowly, imperceptibly, a pattern solidifies. The child learns that their own needs are obstacles to love, not worthy of attention in their own right. Fast forward 20 years. That child is now an adult who cannot rest without feeling guilty, who says yes to every request because saying no feels like moral failure, who has become the designated helper, the eternal giver, the person everyone relies on. And from the outside, this looks admirable. It looks like character. It looks like the kind of person we should all aspire to be. But here's what nobody sees: the private exhaustion, the resentment that builds like pressure behind a dam, the voice inside that whispers, increasingly desperately, when is it my turn? When do I matter? That voice gets silenced, of course, because kind people have learned that their needs are selfish, that wanting anything for themselves makes them bad people. So they push harder, give more, sacrifice deeper, all while a part of them slowly dies. Section 2. When kindness becomes self-destruction. There's a term that healthcare professionals know well: compassion fatigue. It describes what happens when someone gives and gives until their capacity for empathy literally runs dry. Nurses experience it. Therapists experience it. Social workers, teachers, caregivers, anyone in a helping profession knows this bone-deep depletion. But here's what most people don't realize. You don't need to work in healthcare to experience compassion fatigue. Everyday people who identify as kind, who pride themselves on being there for others, are walking around with this same exhaustion. The friend who always listens but never shares their own struggles. The family member who hosts every holiday and never complains. The colleague who takes on extra work to help the team. They're all at risk. Research reveals something crucial here. Studies in behavioral psychology demonstrate that people who consistently prioritize others while neglecting themselves show significantly higher rates of anxiety and depression than those who maintain boundaries. Their physical health suffers too. Higher cortisol levels, compromised immune function, chronic inflammation. The body keeps score,
and endless self-sacrifice shows up as literal disease. Think about what this means. Kindness without boundaries doesn't just make you tired, it makes you sick. It rewires your stress response, floods your system with hormones designed for short-term emergencies, and keeps you in a state of perpetual depletion. You're essentially running a marathon every single day, but you call it being nice so nobody notices you're dying. And here's the cruelest part. The kinder you are, the more invisible you become. When you always adjust, always accommodate, always prioritize others, people stop asking what you want. They stop considering your preferences because you've trained them, unconsciously, to overlook you. Your kindness becomes expected, then assumed, then required. You've made yourself into a support system that everyone leans on, but nobody supports in return. Section 3. The weapon of niceness. Now we enter darker territory, because kindness doesn't just hurt the person performing it. Sometimes, paradoxically, it becomes a subtle form of control. This isn't about malicious manipulation. I'm talking about something more unconscious, more insidious. When you become known as the unfailingly kind one, you create implicit expectations. People shape their behavior around your niceness. They rely on it, depend on it, build their lives assuming you'll always be available, always helpful, always understanding. And without realizing it, your consistent kindness teaches people that your feelings are optional, that your needs are negotiable, that your boundaries don't exist. And because you never push back, never assert yourself, never demonstrate that you have limits, they genuinely believe this is fine. They're not trying to take advantage. You've simply shown them, through years of behavior, that you're an inexhaustible resource. This creates a trap. You want to start saying no, to start protecting yourself, but doing so feels like betrayal. How can you suddenly become unavailable when people have built their expectations around your constant availability? How can you prioritize yourself when everyone has learned to lean on you? The very kindness that made you valuable has boxed you into a role you can no longer escape without disappointing everyone. There's research on this phenomenon too. Social psychologists have found that people who struggle with assertiveness, who identify strongly as agreeable and kind, often experience what's called role entrapment. They become imprisoned by others' expectations, unable to evolve or change without facing backlash. Their kindness, which started as a gift, becomes their cage. Section 4. The myth of the selfless good person. Let's examine the cultural lie that makes all of this worse. We worship selflessness in ways that are frankly unhealthy. Think about the language we use to praise people. She's so selfless. He never thinks of himself. They'd give you the shirt off their back. These descriptions sound positive, but parse them carefully. Selfless means without a self. Never thinking of yourself means your needs don't exist. Giving away what you need means self-deprivation is virtuous. We're literally praising the erasure of personhood and calling it moral excellence. This cultural message starts early and runs deep. Children absorb it from stories where heroes sacrifice everything, from religious teachings that equate suffering with holiness, from social norms that reward niceness and punish assertiveness, especially in women and marginalized groups. The message is clear. Good people put themselves last. But this creates a psychological nightmare. When your entire sense of worth depends on self-sacrifice, you can never rest. You can never just be. Your value is always conditional on what you're giving away, which means you're never enough just by existing. You have to constantly prove your goodness through depletion.
Studies on altruistic behavior reveal something fascinating and disturbing. Researchers have found that helping others only increases well-being when it's genuinely voluntary and motivated by authentic desire. When kindness is performed from obligation, guilt, or fear of judgment, it actively decreases happiness and increases stress hormones. In other words, forced kindness is poison disguised as virtue. Yet so many people are trapped in exactly this pattern. They help not because they want to, but because they're terrified of being seen as selfish, of losing approval, of being abandoned. Their kindness is an insurance policy against rejection. And insurance policies, by definition, are paid in fear. Section 5. The monster that lives in repression. Here's where we confront the real darkness. When you suppress your needs, when you bury your anger, when you deny your limits, all in the name of being kind, those feelings don't disappear. They go underground. They ferment. They grow teeth. This is the monster within that kind people don't want to acknowledge, the shadow self that's been accumulating years of unexpressed frustration, unmet needs, and unspoken resentments. It's every time you said yes and meant no. Every time you smiled through exhaustion. Every time you helped when you wanted to scream. That shadow doesn't stay quiet forever. It leaks out in ways you can't control. Maybe it's snapping at someone you love over something trivial. Maybe it's passive-aggressive comments that surprise even you. Maybe it's a sudden, explosive anger that seems to come from nowhere, but has actually been building for decades. The kind person who never gets angry eventually becomes terrifying in their rage because it's been compressed into a bomb. Neuroscience explains why this happens. Your brain has threat detection systems designed to alert you when your boundaries are violated. When you consistently override these systems, telling yourself you're fine when you're not, pushing past exhaustion, ignoring your own needs, you create neurological havoc. The stress response stays activated, and your nervous system exists in a state of chronic dysregulation. Eventually, something breaks. It might be your health, the autoimmune disease that emerges from years of stress. It might be your relationships, the sudden ending you couldn't explain because you didn't realize how much resentment had built up. It might be your sense of self, the crisis where you wake up one day and realize you have no idea who you are apart from what others need from you. This is the true dark side of kindness. Not that being kind is bad, but that weaponizing kindness against yourself creates internal monsters that eventually demand recognition. And when they emerge, when those suppressed parts finally break through, the kind person feels shocked and horrified at their own capacity for anger, for resentment, for darkness. But the darkness was always there, created not by badness, but by the impossibility of being endlessly selfless. Section 6. The path to authentic kindness. So, how do we escape this trap? How do we embrace kindness without destroying ourselves in the process? The answer is both simple and terrifying. Kindness must include yourself. Not as an afterthought, not as something you get to if there's time, but as the foundation. Because here's the truth that conflicts with everything we're taught. If your kindness doesn't extend to yourself first, it's not really kindness. It's performance. It's people-pleasing. It's survival strategy. But it's not the genuine compassion we think it is. Think of the airplane oxygen mask analogy. You must secure your own mask before helping others. Why? Because if you pass out, you help no one. The same logic applies to emotional and physical well-being. If you deplete yourself completely, your capacity to genuinely care for others disappears. You become a hollow helper, going through the motions while resentment builds inside. This is where boundaries enter, and boundaries are terrifying for chronically kind people. A boundary feels like cruelty. It feels like rejection. It feels like everything you've learned you shouldn't be. But boundaries are actually the highest form of honesty. A boundary says, this is what I can genuinely give. This is where I end and you begin. I care about you, but I cannot disappear in the process. Research supports this completely. Studies show that people who maintain clear boundaries report deeper, more satisfying relationships than those who don't. Why? Because when someone with boundaries says yes, you know it's authentic. Their help isn't grudging or resentful. It's chosen. And chosen kindness is infinitely more valuable than obligated niceness. But setting boundaries means risking disapproval. It means some people won't like you anymore. Some will call you selfish or claim you've changed. And yes, you will lose relationships, but here's what nobody tells you. Those relationships were built on your self-erasure. They weren't real intimacy. They were transactions where you traded your well-being for approval. Losing them is painful, but necessary. Section 7. Practical steps forward. Let's get practical. How do you actually shift from destructive kindness to sustainable compassion? First, practice the pause. When someone asks something of you, don't immediately respond. Take a breath. Create space between the request and your answer. In that space, check in with yourself honestly. Do I have capacity for this? Do I genuinely want to do this? What will this cost me? This simple pause can save you from automatic people-pleasing that you'll regret later. Second, learn to say no with love. A no doesn't require elaborate justification or apology. It can be simple and kind. I can't take this on right now. I don't have the capacity. That doesn't work for me. Notice you don't need to explain why or convince anyone your no is valid. It's valid because you said it, period. Third, redefine your worth. Your value doesn't come from what you do for others. You were valuable before anyone needed you. You're valuable when you're resting. You're valuable when you're saying no. Your existence itself is enough. This belief system takes years to rebuild, but it's essential. Start treating yourself as if you matter as much as everyone you help, because you do. Fourth, fill your own cup. Identify what genuinely nourishes you. Activities, relationships, practices that restore rather than deplete. And then prioritize these things not as rewards after you've served everyone else, but as non-negotiable necessities. You can't pour from an empty cup isn't just a cliché. It's neurological fact. Fifth, welcome the uncomfortable emotions. Anger, frustration, resentment. These aren't enemies of kindness. They're messengers telling you that boundaries have been crossed, that needs are unmet. If you suppress them, they become the monster within. If you listen to them with curiosity and compassion, they become guides, showing you where you need better boundaries. Section 8. The ultimate kindness. The transformation from compulsive kindness to authentic compassion is really a journey from performance to presence. When kindness is performance, it's exhausting because you're constantly monitoring. Am I nice enough? Will they approve? What if they get upset? The performance requires enormous energy because you're not being yourself, you're being what you think others need. But when kindness flows from genuine presence, from showing up as your full, authentic self and choosing compassion from that grounded place, it becomes effortless. Not because it doesn't require anything, but because it's not costing you yourself. You're not trading your well-being for approval. You're not disappearing to help someone appear. This kind of kindness is actually more powerful, not less. When you help from overflow rather than depletion, people feel it. They sense the authenticity. They trust it more because it's not tinged with hidden resentment or martyrdom. Ironically, becoming less compulsively nice often makes you more genuinely helpful because your help comes from solid ground. There's an old wisdom about this. You can't give what you don't have. If you don't have rest, you can't truly offer energy. If you don't have boundaries, you can't offer sustainable support. If you don't have self-compassion, your compassion for others will always be strained and incomplete. The work of including yourself in your circle of kindness isn't selfish. It's the prerequisite for genuine generosity.
So we return to where we started, but with new understanding. The dark side of kindness isn't that being kind is wrong. It's that kindness, separated from self-respect, from boundaries, from honesty, becomes toxic to you and eventually to everyone around you. The exhausted kind person who resents everyone they help isn't serving anyone well. The people pleaser who says yes from fear creates relationships built on false foundations. The self-sacrificing martyr teaches others that exploitation is acceptable. None of this is actual kindness. It's self-destruction wearing a smile. Real kindness, the kind that heals rather than harms, includes fierce self-honesty. It includes the courage to say no. It includes taking up space and having needs and being visible rather than invisible. It includes showing others that compassion doesn't mean self-erasure, that love doesn't require suffering, that caring for someone can coexist with caring for yourself. This is the kindness the world actually needs. Not more people sacrificing themselves on the altar of niceness, not more exhausted helpers collapsing from compassion fatigue. We need people who have learned to love without disappearing, to give without depleting, to care without abandoning themselves in the process. So the next time someone tells you how kind you are, don't just smile and accept it automatically. Ask yourself, is this kindness coming from freedom or fear? From fullness or emptiness? From my authentic self or from a mask I'm afraid to remove? The answer matters more than you might think. Because at the end of this exploration, we discover that the monster within kind people isn't their anger or their boundaries or their needs. The real monster is the belief that they don't matter, that their worth depends on endless giving, that love requires self-obliteration. That belief is what destroys. And once you confront it, once you refuse to keep feeding it, something extraordinary happens. Your kindness doesn't disappear, it evolves. It becomes stronger, clearer, more sustainable. It becomes the kind of kindness that doesn't just keep others alive while you die inside. It becomes kindness that keeps everyone alive, including you. And maybe that's the ultimate lesson here. The highest form of kindness isn't sacrifice, it's wholeness. It's showing the world that compassion and self-respect aren't opposites, they're partners. That you can care deeply while also mattering deeply. That true kindness begins and ends with including yourself in the circle of those deserving love. So be kind. Please, be kind. The world desperately needs more compassion, more generosity, more people who care. But be kind to yourself first, not instead of others, but alongside them. Be kind enough to yourself to rest when you're tired. Be kind enough to say no when you need to. Be kind enough to exist as a full person with needs and limits and desires. Because that kind of kindness, whole, honest, sustainable, is what transforms the world. And it starts with transforming how you see yourself.